Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. Thanks for joining me once again. Today, I am going to share my review of Dungeons & Dragons, the practically complete guide to dragons from Wizards of the Coast. It's written by Susan J. Morris, Lisa Tutkoff-Trumbauer, and James Wyatt. This 128-page hardcover is supposed to be available August 22nd. Got to be honest, I've been hearing stories from people that they're actually being able to purchase this book in some game stores, and they were able to pick it up the same day D&D Bigby Presents Glory of the Giants arrived, which is pretty odd. But still, according to Wizards of the Coast, this will be available on August 22nd, and it does carry an MSRP of $39.95. All that said, let's swing on over to the other camera, because here I've got the practically complete guide to dragons. A couple of things I do want to mention before we jump on in. First of all, the fine folks over at Wizards of the Coast were kind enough to provide me with this review copy, but neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share this review with you. These days, it's important that you know that. We're also not going to look at each and every page of the book, but I do want to give you a good feel for what's inside and share my thoughts about this. All right, so let's get started. So one of the first things I do want to point out is most of the content of the practically complete guide to dragons was previously published as a series of 3 other books, and it is the Practical Guide to Dragons, the Practical Guide to Dragon Writing, and the Practical Guide to Dragon Magic. Now, when I did my first look video, I mentioned that I thought those books were like from the 4th edition era, but I guess they are actually from the 3rd edition era of Dungeons and Dragons. As I pointed out before, from 2nd to 4th edition, I really wasn't involved with Dungeons and Dragons, so I'm not real up on a lot of the releases and lore and things like that from those editions. So the first thing I want to mention is that, at least in my opinion, from what this looks like to my eyes, is that this book is actually aimed at younger readers. And I have no problem with that. I have absolutely no issue with this being a lore book about dragons in D&D, and it's for younger readers. I don't want to necessarily say children, but, you know, young teens, tweens, things like that. And one of the first giveaways that this isn't really written for adults is the size of the font. Now, I'm going to share a page from this is the latest D&D supplement, Bigby Presents Glory of the Giants, which I just reviewed, and it just came out. And this is pretty indicative of any of the 5e D&D books. But look at that font. Look at the font in a game book as opposed to this. And a lot of times when you see larger fonts in a book, especially with so many images such as this, it is aimed at younger readers. Now, the point of view of the practically complete guide to dragons is from a wizard, Sindri Suncatcher, and she isn't necessarily the most reliable narrator. So some of the information she shares could be incorrect. Some of it is assumption. So keep that in mind. Now, I'm going to talk about my biggest issue with this book when I wrap up and I share some final thoughts and give this a review score. But let me just say right now that the way that this book is being presented to the buying public is far, far different than what this book actually is. And we'll get into that a little bit later. So we have these just little bite-sized nuggets of information throughout. So we've got, anatomy of dragons, and we have a section towards the end of the book about dragon flight, riding dragons. We have dragon combat, and for an example, we see breath weapons, claws and bite, dragon fear. They're incredible natural weapons that they can use to incapacitate their enemies. And then their defenses, their weaknesses, things like that. But as you can see, just about everything is a single paragraph. Here we've got a couple of paragraphs, but the reality is that paragraph's 2 sentences long. Really doesn't count as a paragraph, at least in the truest sense of what a paragraph is. But I find it really interesting that, it's just these little tidbits about dragons and their abilities and what they look like, their appearances, what makes them different. Now, one of the things that kind of stands out about the Practically Complete Guide to Dragons is that each type of dragon, both the chromatic and metallic, receive about 6 pages of information about each of them. So here we've got our types of dragons, and the majority of the page space is devoted to these types of dragons. So as an example, let's go to, this should be, the blue dragon here. So it's going to give you some background about each of the dragons. Then it gives us some facts. And one of the things that I thought is just absolutely bizarre is the maximum weight of these dragons make absolutely no sense whatsoever. So the maximum weight of a blue dragon, and all the dragons are like this. It's not just, oh, wow, is this a misprint? The maximum weight of a blue dragon is 160,000 pounds. Let that sink in for a minute. At 160,000 pounds, how would this ever fly? How would this even move? Be like, oh, well, it was sitting on top of a mountain and the mountain crumbled under its weight. It's like, okay. So we get distinguishing features. What do their eggs look like? And is there anything particularly different about their eggs? Wormlings, adults, we get a breakdown of what their layers are like. And I do like the kind of side view of the various different layers. I think that's kind of cool. And then we also get some information about what makes this particular dragon to be unique in combat. And that's what we'll get for each of these various different dragons. And once again, as I mentioned, a great amount of the page count of this book is devoted to these sections. We also get some information about dragon kin. So creatures that are related to dragons. So we've got like wyvern, and we've got fairy dragons. Kobolds are mentioned as well. As you see, I'm still flipping through all the different colored dragons. As I mentioned, we've got the chromatic, and then we've got the metallic. So here's where we get into dragon kind. I know I said kin, but it's dragon kind. So we're going to have a section about this. And once again, just little nuggets of information. But as a lore book, especially a lore book that's aimed at younger readers, or maybe interested in Dungeons and Dragons, or maybe just interested in dragons, period, I think this is well done. I think this is nicely presented. Then we get into our section, as I mentioned, about dragon flight and riding dragons. And then we wrap up with heroes of dragon magic. And it's kind of weird because I guess most of this information was from 3 different books. And one of them was the Practical Guide to Dragon Magic, but it's only like 4 pages long. So it's like, wait, what? So it's like here, there, that's it. And then we get a wrap up from our maybe not so reliable narrator. And that is the Practically Complete Guide to Dragons. So I do want to say, as a lore book aimed at kids, this is absolutely fine. I like the artwork throughout. I should point out, you can tell that this artwork all comes from an earlier edition of Dungeons and Dragons. Maybe not every single piece of art, but a great amount of it, because it has far too much of a like line art look to it, and it does not have any of that kind of digitized style that we see with a lot of the 5th edition D&D artwork. And of course, I get it. You know, Hasbro owns the rights to utilize this artwork. They have this published material already floating out there, so they decide, hey, you know what? We'll release a book about dragons. Sure. Okay, I understand that. No problem. As a lore book that's aimed at younger viewers. But let's swing on over to the other camera, because I'm going to share my final thoughts and give this a review score. My problem lies with how this book is being presented to the buying public. When it was first announced, I seem to recall that the announcement really did focus on, hey, you know, this is a lore book. You're not going to find stat blocks and things like that in the book. And it seems like Wizards of the Coast moved away from that sort of presentation. So if you actually go to dnd.wizards.com, you'll actually see the sell sheet info for the Practically Complete Guide to Dragons, and it makes it sound as if this is an essential supplement that Dungeon Masters really should pick up. And it certainly is not. I can't stress this enough. It's kind of a kid's book with little nuggets about dragons in it. Once again, I have no problem with the book itself. I think it's nice. It's a $40 book, a little pricey for what you're actually getting. But still, with the actual book itself, I have no problem with. How Wizards of the Coast is presenting this, I have a major issue with. So, a quote directly from the sales page for the Practically Complete Guide to Dragons, which is right there next to all the other D&D releases, right? This isn't in like the merchandise area. No, this is in the game book section. It says both new and experienced dungeon masters will uncover a wealth of knowledge in this extensively researched guide. Extensively researched by who? A fictional character? Every page is filled with extraordinary dragon lore that dungeon masters can use to enrich their D&D campaigns. Now, does it come out and say, oh, hey, there's stat blocks and all these? No, it doesn't. But the way that is presented makes one think, oh, hey, you know, as a dungeon master, this is really going to give me the inside dope on dragons for me to utilize in my adventures with my players. And that's really not the case, because there really isn't much in here that you don't already know from Monster Manual. Sorry, gotta be honest. So, as of late, over the past few years, it seems to me that Wizards of the Coast has gotten into this shtick where they misrepresent what they're selling. And they've done it time and time again when they talk about their player options. So, as an example, I recently reviewed Big B Presents Glory of the Giants. I liked it. I thought it was pretty well done. But a problem I had is once again, Wizards of the Coast is presenting, oh, wow, we got all these great player options that are available, and oh, you'll be so excited. And then it turns out it's just a handful of pages. It's like 5 pages. We see this all the time. We see the discussion from Wizards of the Coast about, oh, hey, we've got new playable species coming in XYZ book. And then that book comes out, and the content related to that playable species is all of 5 paragraphs and a piece of artwork. I don't know. I don't know what the deal is right now with Wizards of the Coast. And of course, I'm sure it's all being pushed by Hasbro, just like Hasbro wants more D&D content out there, so why not take stuff that we've already published and artwork we already, have licensed to utilize and put together a new book? Once again, I've got no issue with that. Just don't present this as it being some sort of a game book for players and mostly dungeon masters, because to me that's disingenuous. It really is. So as a book, like I said, it's fine. I like the artwork. It's okay. I mean, I can't say I learned new stuff about dragons. Okay, the dragon riding part, yeah, that was new to me, at least. It's been published prior. But as far as a review score, I'm gonna have to ding this big time because of how it's being presented to the buying public from Wizards of the Coast. So on a scale of 0 to 10, I give Dungeons and Dragons, the practically complete guide to dragons, a 5 out of 10. If you've got kids, they like dragons, yeah, I'd say pick it up. If you're a dungeon master out there and you have a great amount of the previously published 5e material, I don't think it's worth picking up. All right, that is it for this time out. Once again, if you like this video, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, ring that bell, because it'll not only let you know when I upload videos such as this review, it'll also inform you when my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings right here on YouTube at 7 p.m. Central. And of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to stop by thegaminggang.com for all latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more that you won't find here on the YouTube channel. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer. Thank you very much for watching. And until I see you next time, here's hoping each and every one of you gets to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.